Attention, please. The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to our beloved friends and beloved lecturer. Today, we will be presenting about our topic, which is Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025. So, this is our group member. So today, I will briefly explain about the background and the development of education policy in Malaysia. Education policy refers to the laws and decisions made by the government to manage the education system. It covers things like the curriculum, teaching method, funding, and the access to the education. This is important because it helps develop skilled citizens, supports economic growth, and promotes social unity. In Malaysia, education policy also plays a key role in ensuring equal opportunities and strengthening national unity. Looking at the historical background, before the colonial rule, education in Malaya was informal and mainly took place in religious institutions like pondok schools. During British colonial rule, the system became divided based on ethnic groups. Different communities had their own schools with different language and curricula, which created challenges for unity. After independence in 1957, the government worked to unify the system. One major step was the RAZALI report, which aimed to create a national education system and promote Bahasa Melayu. Later, the Education Act 1996 was introduced to provide a clear legal framework for the system. More recently, the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025 was launched to improve education quality, enhance teaching standards, and prepare students for future job demands. In conclusions, Malaysia's education policy has evolved from a fragmented system into a more unified and structured one, helping to support national development and unity.
I will now continue the presentation by discussing the policy problems identified in the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025. I will focus on 4 key issues, which is the need for skilled workforce, educational inequality, lack of standardizations, and the need to improve education quality. A policy problem refers to a gap between the current situation and the desired outcome that require government action. In Malaysia, although access to education is high, the system faces challenges in the terms of quality, equality, and effectiveness. These issues were identified through a national review conducted between 2011 to 2012, which led to the development of the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2035. A policy problem refers to a situation where there is a gap between the current condition and the desired outcome which require government intervention. In the context of Malaysia, although the education system has successfully achieved high enrollment rates, meaning most students have access to schooling, there are still major challenges in the term of quality, equality, and effectiveness of learning. The Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2035 was developed based on the comprehensive national review conducted between 2011 and 2012, which identifies several weaknesses in the system. These include unequal student outcomes, inconsistent education standards, low quality education, and a mismatch between student skills and labour market needs. These problems highlight that access alone is not enough. The focus must also be on what students actually learn and how well they are prepared for the future. Firstly, the need for a skilled workforce is a major policy problem. In today's economy, education must prepare students with skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and innovation. However, studies shows that Malaysian students were not meeting global standards, especially in assessment like Program for International Students Assessment, or known as a PISA. This problem happened mainly because the education system was too exam-oriented, focusing more on memorization rather than developing thinking skill. As a result, students were able to pass exam but lacked the ability to apply knowledge in real-life situations. The World Bank 2013 reported that Malaysian students perform below expectation in international assessments such as PISA. This evidence is important because PISA does not only test knowledge but also student ability to apply knowledge in a real-life situation. Therefore, low performance in PISA shows that students lack higher order thinking skill. More recent evidence from the World Bank 2034 shows that students still lack both basic and advanced skills, which means the problem is ongoing. Additionally, there was a mismatch between the curriculum and the industry needs, meaning what students learned in the school did not fully prepare for them for the job market. The second policy problem is educational inequality. This inequality happens because the students in the rural or lower income areas often have a limited access to quality resources such as learning materials, technology, and experienced teachers. The Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2035 shows that there was a 4% gap in the UPSR result between the urban and rural students, and this gap increased to 8% at this SPM level. This evidence is important because it shows that inequality becomes more serious over time, meaning students who fall behind early less able to catch up later. It also shows that the education system does not provide equal outcomes for all students. Recent findings from the World Bank 2034 further expand that these gaps begin from the early childhood development, which affects long-term academic performance. In addition, from these advantages, backgrounds may have a lower readiness, meaning they start school with a weaker foundational skills. The issue is the need to standardize the education system. Before reform, schools used different teaching methods, curriculum approaches, and assessment system leading to inconsistent learning experiences. This problem happened because there was no strong central standards to ensure that all schools follow the same level of quality. The Malaysia Education Blueprint, based on a national review in 2011-2012, found significant differences in the student performance across states and schools. This evidence shows that the education system was not consistent as students' outcomes depended on where they studied. Additionally, PISA 2009 and 2012 results shows that Malaysia performed below the OECD average and had large variation in student performance within the country. This indicates that some schools were performing much better than others, which reflect a lack of standardization. The final policy problem is the need to improve the quality of education. Education quality refers to how well students understand, apply, and use knowledge in the real-life situation. This problem happened because teaching methods were too focused on memorization and exam performance rather than developing understanding and critical thinking. There was also limited emphasis on higher-order thinking skills, and the curriculum was not fully aligned with the 21st century skills. In addition, differences in the teacher training quality affected the effectiveness of teaching. In the early 2010s, Malaysia shows declining performance in the international assessment such as the IMSS and PISA. This evidence is important because this assessment measures students' ability to apply knowledge, not just only to recall facts. Therefore, low performance indicates weaknesses in the learning quality. Recent evidence from the World Bank 2034 shows that Malaysian students still perform below top-performing country, which means the issue of quality is still ongoing.
Next, we will discuss about policy objective of Malaysia Education Blueprint. The first objective is to improve student outcome by developing well-rounded individual. This means students are not only expected to be academically competent, but also equipped with essential life skills. They are encouraged to master higher-order thinking skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to apply knowledge in real-life situations. In addition, this objective emphasizes the importance of leadership qualities, bilingual proficiency in both Bahasa Melayu and English, as well as strong moral value and a clear sense of national identity. Overall, this reflects a shift from a traditional exam-oriented system towards a more holistic education model that supports student intellectual, emotional, and social development. The second objective focuses on ensuring that every student in Malaysia has access to quality education regardless of their background or location. The aim is to achieve full enrollment at both primary and secondary level so that no child is left behind. At the same time, efforts are made to reduce the gap between urban and rural schools, especially in terms of facilities, resources, and teaching quality. By addressing these inequalities, the education system creates a more inclusive and equitable learning environment where all the students are given equal opportunity to succeed and reach their full potential. The third objective highlights the importance of teachers and school leaders as key factor in student success. The blueprint emphasizes recruiting highly qualified and passionate individuals into the teaching profession. It also focuses on continuous professional development to ensure teachers are equipped with updated knowledge and effective teaching method. In addition, strengthening the leadership skill of school principal and administrator is crucial in creating a positive and high-performing school environment. Effective leadership helps guide teachers, improve school management, and ultimately enhance overall student performance. The fourth objective is to increase the efficiency of the education system by ensuring that all resources are used effectively. These include managing financial resources, time, infrastructure, and human capital such as teachers and staff. By reducing wastage and improving coordination, the system can deliver education more efficiently. Better planning and streamlined process also help ensure that resources are allocated to areas where they are most needed. As a result, the education system can achieve better outcomes in a more cost-effective and sustainable way. Last but not least, the final objective is to strengthen accountability and transparency within the education system. This means that school teachers and administrators are responsible for student performance and overall outcome. Monitoring and evaluation systems are used to track progress, measure performance, and identify areas for improvement. At the same time, transparency ensures that information about school performance and decision is accessible to stakeholders such as parents and the public. This helps build trust and ensure the education system continues to improve and remain effective.
I will be presenting section 4.0, which is focused on strategies to improve the education system. First, for improving student outcomes, the main focus is to shift from exam-oriented learning to a more holistic approach through classroom-based assessment or PBD. Students are assessed continuously, not just through final exams. This helps develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. However, one key challenge is ensuring consistency among teachers when applying this method. Next, teacher capability is also important. Teachers need to be equipped with modern teaching methods that focus on high-order thinking skills or HOTS. This helps students analyze and apply knowledge better, although it depends on teachers' readiness to adapt. Technology also supports learning through platforms like Delimer, making learning more interactive and flexible. However, unequal access to internet and devices, especially in rural areas, can limit its effectiveness. Moving on to ensuring equal access to quality education, the main goal is to reduce inequality. Policies such as the zero reject policy and financial aid help ensure all students can access education. However, limitation in resources and infrastructure may affect implementation. In addition, improving digital access is important for online learning, but challenges like poor internet connection and affordability still exist. Lastly, proper resources distribution is needed to ensure fairness among schools, as unequal allocation can affect education quality. Next, to enhance the quality of teachers and school leaders, continuous training is essential. This helps educators stay updated, but its effectiveness depends on how practical and consistent the training is. Reducing teacher workload is also important so they can focus more on teaching rather than administrative tasks. However, this requires proper system support. At the same time, teacher training must align with the current curriculum to ensure effective teaching. For system efficiency, administrative digitalization can help reduce manual work and improve productivity. However, it requires proper training to function well. Centralized platforms like Delimer also improve coordination and access to resources, but over-reliance on digital systems may cause issues. if there are technical problems. Efficient resource allocation is also important to ensure schools receive sufficient support. Finally, in strengthening accountability and transparency, monitoring systems help track school performance and improve decision-making. However, excessive monitoring may reduce flexibility for educators. Using PBD also improves transparency in student assessment, but consistency remains a challenge. Teacher performance evaluation is also important for continuous improvement, but it must be implemented carefully to avoid affecting motivation. In conclusion, these strategies are important in improving student outcomes, ensuring equal access, enhancing educator quality, and increasing overall system efficiency. Thank you.
Hello and Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm IMANINA ALYA binti Muhammad RAZALI, and I will be presenting about the policy evaluation, the before and after, what has actually changed on the ground after 10 years of implementation of Malaysia Education Blueprint. The first strengths are switch from exams to holistic learning. The first major strength is a massive cultural shift. Before this blueprint, our schools were often called exams factories. Everything depended on the UPSR and PT3 results, but under the MEB, we finally broke that cycle. By 2022, those major exams were completely gone. In their place, we now have PBD, a classroom-based assessment. This isn't just about a grade at the end of the year. It's about teacher observing students every day to develop their character and their ability to think critically, rather than just memorizing facts for a test. The second success is about near universal access. We wanted to make sure no child was left behind. Before 2013, children with disabilities or those living in very deep rural areas often struggled to even get into the system. However, through the zero reject policy, we made a huge leap. As of last year, our primary enrollment hit 98.3%. This is a huge win for inclusivity, which means we are closer than ever to ensuring that every single children in Malaysia has a seat in a classroom. Third is a digital modernization. Thirdly, let's talk about technology. Before the blueprint, our digital efforts were scattered and disorganized. There was no central hub. That changed with Dilemma. This is a massive cloud platform that connects over 5 million students, teachers, and parents. It has basically become the digital backbone of Malaysia education, making the system much more efficient and ready for a globalized workforce. Next, let's talk about the weaknesses of the policy. The first weaknesses are international benchmarks. Even though we've changed the structure of education, the quality hasn't yet reached international standards. Back in 2012, we were already below the global average. But after 10 years of the blueprint, the PISA 2022 results actually showed a decline. Our math scores dropped significantly to 409. This tells us that simply changing the framework hasn't yet translated into the better academic performance on the world stage. The second weaknesses are the digital and rural divide. Another major hurdle is the digital divide. It's one thing to have a platform like Dilemma, but it's another thing to be able to use it. During the pandemic, we saw the reality. UNICEF found that nearly 37% of our students didn't even have a device to log in with. While urban schools move online, many rural students have left with dark to the poor internet and lack of hardware. The gap between the city and the countryside is still a major unsolved problem. Lastly, the weaknesses are the teachers burned out. Finally, we have to talk about the teachers. The blueprint was supposed to make their lives easier so they could focus on teaching. Instead, the shift to PBD and new digital system has buried them in paperwork. Teachers are now facing what we call policy fatigue. They are tired of constant changes and endless data entry. According to NUTP, the stress is becoming unsustainable. While teachers are too busy filling out forms to satisfy policy, they have less time to actually inspire their students.
So, we move to the recommendation. Firstly, to address the decline in student performance in international benchmarks such as PISA, it is important for the Ministry of Education to strengthen the implementation of higher order thinking skills or HOTS as well as evidence-based teaching practices. This is crucial because Malaysia has not yet achieved its target of being in the top third of PISA rankings. Therefore, more emphasis should be placed on core subjects such as mathematics, science, and reading. In addition, targeted intervention program should be introduced to support low-performing students. At the same time, classroom-based assessment or PBD should be improved to ensure consistency and reliability in evaluating student outcome across schools. Secondly, in response to teachers' workload and police fatigue, the Ministry of Education should streamline administrative process, particularly by simplifying PBD reporting requirements, which have significantly contributed to teachers' stress. Teachers are currently burdened with excessive clerical tasks, which reduce their focus on teaching. To address this, school should be provided with administrative support staff to handle non-teaching duties. Furthermore, policy implementation should be more structured and gradual, including pilot testing before full nationwide implementation in order to reduce confusion and resistance caused by frequent policy changes. Thirdly, to reduce the digital divide between urban and rural areas, the government should prioritize investment in digital infrastructure. This includes expanding broadband access, improving internet stability, and providing digital devices to students from low-income households. These measures are essential because many students, particularly in rural areas, previously lacked access to online learning during the pandemic. Ensure equal access to digital resources will help reduce educational inequality and improve overall learning outcomes. Next, although digital platforms such as Lima have been introduced as part of education modernization, their effectiveness depends largely on how well they are utilized by the teachers and the students. Therefore, teachers should be provided with continuous training in the digital pedagogy and interactive teaching method. In addition, student engagement should be enhanced through more interactive and user-friendly learning tools. A proper monitoring and evaluation system should also be implemented to assess their effectiveness of digital learning platforms and ensure that they contribute positively to student performance. In addition, to address teachers' burnout and retention issues, it is important to strengthen teachers' well-being policies. This includes providing access to mental health support, counseling services, and better workload management system. At the same time, improving career progression pathway and professional developing opportunities can help increase motivation and retain experienced teachers in the system. Finally, to ensure inclusive and equitable education, the government should strengthen the implementation of inclusive education policies. This includes improving support for students with disability, enhancing teachers' training in inclusive practices, and it is ensuring adequate resources in rural and marginalized communities. Effective monitoring is also necessary to ensure that policies such as the zero reject policy are consistently implemented across all the schools. So, to conclude our presentation, the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 until 2025 represent a major effort by the government to transform Malaysia education system into one that is more competitive, inclusive and aligned with global standards. Overall, based on our analysis, this policy was introduced to address several critical issues. Among the most important are the need to develop a skilled workforce, reduce educational inequality, standardize the education system, and improve overall education quality. These problems clearly show that although Malaysia has achieved high access to education, the real challenge lies in quality and equity of outcomes. In response to these issues, the blueprint outlined clear objectives such as improving student outcomes, ensuring equal access to quality education, enhancing the quality of teachers and school leaders, increasing system efficiency, and strengthening accountability and transparency. These objectives are important because they provide a structured direction for long-term education reform. From the strategies implemented, we can see a strong shift in approach. For example, the move from exam-oriented learning to more holistic system through classroom-based assessment aims to develop critical thinking and real-life skills among students. At the same time, initiatives like digital learning platform and inclusive education policies were introduced to modernize the system and ensure that no student is left behind. However, the effectiveness of this strategy still depends heavily on consistent implementation and resource availability. When we evaluate the policy, there are clear strengths. The education system has more inclusive with near universal access achieved. There is also progress in digital transformation through platforms like the Lima and noticeable shift toward more student-centered learning. There are significant improvements compared to the previous system. However, the weaknesses cannot be ignored. Evidence from Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development show that Malaysia performance in Program for International Student Assessment (PISA) has not improved as expected, and in some cases has declined. This indicates the policy reform have not fully translated into better learning outcomes. In addition, the urban-rural gap remains a serious issue, especially in terms of digital access and infrastructure. Students in rural areas still face disadvantages compared to those in urban areas. Another major concern is teachers' workload, where continuous policy change and administrative requirements have led to burnout and reduced teaching effectiveness. Based on these findings, several recommendations were proposed. These include strengthening teachers' practices, improving digital infrastructure, reducing teachers' workload, enhancing the effectiveness of digital platform, and focusing more on teachers' well-being and inclusive education. These steps are necessary to ensure that the policy can achieve its intent outcomes. So, in conclusion, the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 until 2025 has provided a strong foundation for reforming the education system. But having a good policy alone is not enough. The real challenge lies in education, consistency, and continuous improvement.